Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, May 18th, 2017. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Stuart Keating from Earthbound Beer in St. Louis, Missouri joins us to talk about his brewery story, share some tips, and explain why they consider themselves to brew the smallest and weirdest beer in town. If you're new to home brewing or would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com. We can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. If you buy any of our DVD combos, you get a free, very cool Basic Brewing bottle opener. And don't forget to get a copy of our brewer's logbook. You can use it to log and track up to 50 batches of beer. You can find me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. We also have a Basic Brewing Radio and Basic Brewing video page on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon shopping, think of us first. Click on our associate link on basicbrewing.com on the right-hand side of the page there. The beauty part about it is it won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show, and we greatly appreciate your support. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own Magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site. And during the month of May, if you click on the American Homebrewers Association link on our site and join up to the American Homebrewers Association with the keyword sour, you will get a free copy of Michael Tonsmeyer's Brewing American Sour Beers book. So give that a shot. It's an awesome book. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes, our Android app at Amazon.com. We have a Windows Phone app. We're on the BlackBerry podcast directory, and we're on the Stitcher app as well. We're on Google Play Music, and we're on the iHeartRadio app, too. If you want to put a tip in our tip jar, some coinage in our virtual guitar case, you can go to basicbrewing.com/support, and thanks to everybody who's done so already. There are a couple of new videos out there in internet land. This past Friday, I posted an episode of Basic Brewing Video where Steve and I sampled my Extract Robust Coffee Porter, which Steve convinced me was actually a stout, so that's what I'm calling it. I'm really happy with the coffee character of that beer. And we also shot a video for the YouTube channel of Steve's Brew Shop. Steve Wilkes showed off a cherry mead and a pomegranate mead. Both of them are very delicious. Man, he is an awesome mead maker. You can find that channel or that video by searching for Steve's Brew Shop on YouTube and clicking on his channel. And you should subscribe while you're at it because we're planning on putting more content on there. We shot a third video episode that same night that we were doing production, if you can believe it. It's an episode of Basic Brewing Video that I'm planning to post a week from this Friday. It's Steve's response to the Sorghum Challenge. You may remember I gave Steve a bottle of sweet sorghum syrup, and he made a mead with it. Very tasty stuff. And Steve and I got together with Casey Letellier, from soon to be the owner of Ivory Bill Brewing Company in Siloam Springs. We got together this week to record an audio episode sampling my experiment with 3 small batches, adding a single addition of hops at different times in the boil of those 3 small batches. Very interesting results there, and you'll hear that show next week. And that'll be the last episode of Basic Brewing Video before the June break. We always take June off from posting episodes. We want to have some family time, kids coming home from college and all that stuff. And Steve and I will be heading to Minneapolis for HomebrewCon. I'm really excited about that. And I told you last week that Kevin Welch of Boom Island Brewing in Minneapolis is brewing a commercial batch based on my Belgian-inspired sorghum ale. And the plan is to brew that beer with Dingemans malt, and they're planning to serve it at the Cargill booth on the exhibit floor. Cargill distributes a Dingemans malt in the United States, so you'll be able to taste that beer there at HomebrewCon. I'm so excited. Also, Boom Island is planning a crawfish boil at the brewery Saturday night. They're teaming up with a caterer that's from Louisiana, who apparently makes a run down to Louisiana to get crawfish. and brings them up every year. But they're going to happen, that crawfish boil is going to happen at the Boom Island Brewery Saturday night after things wrap up at HomebrewCon. It's a little different this year. The schedule's a little different. So the beer based on my recipe is going to be served there, too. So I'm planning on being there. All very exciting stuff. Also, I got an email from Marshall over at the Brewlosophy saying that he's teaming up with Chip Walton from Chop and Brew to host the Chop and Brew with the umlaut, pre-funk party Wednesday evening before the conference starts. And that'll happen at the Insight Brewing. You have to get tickets to go to that. Lots of fun things happening there. You can find out more details about that at brewlosophy.com/prefunk2017. So it's a limited amount of tickets for that. So it sounds like a lot of fun. Check it out. And this is starting to sound like community event calendar here, but it's all good stuff. Our sponsors, Desiree and Dave from High Gravity in Tulsa, are having an event this coming weekend. They've moved into their new space at 6808 South Memorial Drive, and they're celebrating with a grand opening Saturday, May 20th. That's this Saturday from noon to 4. Their tap room will be open, serving homebrew. There'll be a live band. Oklahoma's Munch Company food truck will be serving street tacos, and I'll be there come heck or high water. It's supposed to rain, but I'll be darned if the weather forces me to miss this thing. So what else do you need? Well, how about a discount code for Basic Brewing Radio listeners to save $75 off of a high-gravity brewing system or a Warthog electric brewery controller? $75 off. Just enter the code EBC75BB to save $75 on your new system or controller. Think of an electronic brewery controller 75BB, Basic Brewing, EBC75BB. You can contact Desiree or Dave for more details on that if you have any questions. So, if you're going to be in the Tulsa area Saturday, May 20th from noon to 4, stop on by. And remember that Basic Brewing discount code EBC75BB to use on family-owned and operated highdgravitybrew.com. Okay, this is a great conversation with Stuart from Earthbound Beer. I had a lot of fun. It's a story that features a lot of what I like about home brewing. Small batches, experimental recipes and ingredients, and an adventurous spirit to brew whatever you feel like brewing. Well, Stuart Keating, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hi there.
You are up there in St. Louis, which is it's known for beer, I hear.
Yeah, we've got a couple of breweries around here. The big one down the street from us, you may have heard of. They make a nice American light lager. And seriously, though, I think there's somewhere north of 45 craft breweries within 75 miles of St. Louis, which makes it a really great place if you're a beer drinker.
Wow. Is it challenging, sort of getting a foothold in that market? Is it competitive, or is it an advantage?
That's an interesting one. I mean, it depends on where depends on what you're trying to do. We're largely taproom based, and so having that many breweries is actually an advantage because people expect to go to taprooms to drink, and people come in from out of town to visit taprooms and visit the breweries themselves. So that's really nice. I've noticed the grocery store shelves filling up a little bit, but most of the grocery store shelves are still fake craft brands owned by large international breweries. Mm-hmm. So we've got plenty of market share we can still chip away at before we have to compete with each other.
Now, I read on a story online about you guys. By the way, I've got to say you come recommended by Bill Streeter, who is an internet friend of mine. We've never talked in person, but we are mutual fans of each other's podcasts, I think.
Yeah, he actually recommended we reach out to you a long time ago, and we didn't think we had anything important to talk about, so we didn't.
Well, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh man, you got to check out this guy. And I was like, well, we don't know anything about beer that anybody else has already said. There's no reason we need to do this. So.
Well, everybody's got a different approach. And you guys, I was reading this article, and you apparently frame yourself as the smallest and weirdest beer in St. Louis. Is that true?
That's true. It's an open debate as to whether or not we're the smallest. We're certainly very, very close to being the smallest. We are by far the weirdest beer in St. Louis. Intentionally weird, too, is the nice thing, not unintentionally weird.
See,
whole different concept.
You say you got nothing to bring to the conversation right there. That's right up our alley.
All right, well, there we go.
So first of all, before we get into the juicy stuff, give us some background on who you and your partners are. How did you guys get started brewing beer, and how did you decide to turn pro?
All right. I have two business partners. I have Jeff Siddons, who I met back in college at the University of Oklahoma about a decade ago, a little more than a decade ago now, and Rebecca Schranz, who was an intern of mine at an environmental nonprofit I used to run. And I moved up to St. Louis to go to law school, graduated from law school, taught myself how to homebrew during those years, was homebrewing really aggressively, and primarily homebrewing because I was not finding things I was interested in on the grocery store shelves. So I thought I would teach myself a little bit. My buddy Jeff moved up from Oklahoma and was working the retail job, and we were talking one night, and he said he'd really like to open a restaurant, or not open a restaurant, open a business and work for himself and not have to punch the clock. I had a business plan I'd written for a small brewery that would rely on taproom traffic and really cheap rent and a very, very, very affordable startup budget, and we agreed to do it. So that's how we got started. We homebrewed a bunch of test batches while we built out the brewery, kind of figured out what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, and we opened 2.5 years ago.
And what's your setup like? What's your equipment?
Our equipment is a 1.5 barrel brew house. We produce beer about 45 gallons at a time. It's a 2-kettle setup. We have a mash tun that has a tankless hot water heater that's it's been modified to produce 180-degree water on demand. And then we have a boil kettle as well. It's also 45 gallons, and they're made out of refurbished stainless steel drums.
And so that's, I mean, it sounds like, I hope you won't take offense, but it sounds kind of like a glorified homebrew setup. And I'm sure there are homebrewers out there who might have, setups that are bigger than yours volume-wise.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is very much a glorified homebrew setup. We designed it that way so that we could make a bunch of different beers and never really be tied down to making the same 4 or 5 things. We have 6 fermenters and 1 bright tank, and we're able to turn out about 150 brew days a year-ish, somewhere in there. It's quite a lot of beer. And I think we average somewhere between 70 and 80 unique beers every year. So we rebrew some stuff, but...
Now, is that sustainable, or do you have plans to grow into a sort of more traditional brewery in the future?
Funny you should ask. We're actually about a month away from opening our new facility, which we've been working on for about 15 months now.
Wow. And what's that going to be like?
So it's on the exact same block that we're currently on. We're at Ohio and Cherokee, and this is down at the other end of the block, Iowa and Cherokee. And the whole block used to be a brewery from 1866 to 1902 before it was closed down. And we are taking over the only remaining building from that brewery and turning it back into a tap room and production facility.
Now, that's cool.
And, I mean, it doesn't really change our model. We're still going to produce a very large number of styles and continue to focus on weird and experimental and unusual. We'll be able to do it at a slightly bigger level, and we'll be able to put things in cans, and we'll be able to in-house our distribution. We currently contract brew our distribution, which is a lot of work, so we get on and do it ourselves.
So maybe you can brew like a sort of flagship beer to keep everything nailed down, and then be weird around the edges.
No, we're just going to be weird all the way through. Our flagships are all weird. It's fine.
I like that. Now,
yeah, I mean, we kind of looked at what we liked and didn't like about craft beer and about the brewing scene, and we didn't like going to bars and breweries and seeing the exact same beer on draft every time we went. So we made it a goal to always have something new on draft every week. And if you set that as one of your goals, you suddenly find yourself exploring a lot of different styles and ingredients.
Now, before we get into the beers, this new space has sort of a bonus that is a leftover from the old brewery, right?
It does. So our current, the new place has 17-foot ceilings, which is not what you were asking about, but is really cool. So it's a nice, tall, beautiful tap room, 2,500 square feet. We'll be serving food, and we'll have seating for about 100 people and a big old beer garden that can seat another 100 people. But underneath the tap room, we have a 2,500 square foot production floor basement that is 17 feet deep. And then attached to that, we have another 2,000-ish, 2,500 square feet of old lagering cellars that are made out of the quarry stones and limestone that used to be in all the caves down here. So we have, and I don't know if it was ever a natural cave or if it was a sinkhole that was then built back up or some combination of the two, because that's how a lot of this worked. But we have some of the original 19th century lagering cellars that we dug out by hand. It took about a month and about 20 people, and we'll be able to barrel age beer in there, which is really exciting.
Wow! And what's the temperature down there?
It's about 66 degrees year round.
Wow! So that's
pretty much perfect.
So metric wise, that would be around 29, something around there. We have international.
No, it would be lower than that.
Let's see, 66 Fahrenheit. Let's see.
Will be, I think.
Oh no! Yeah, 17. Yeah. Boy, I can't.
Yep.
I need new glasses. Somebody actually sent me a chart because they were tired of me not saying metric units.
Oh wow! So I can also say instead of 17 feet, we can say I don't know, 4 meters, I guess, 4.5 meter high ceilings, and I can't convert square feet to square meters. I'm sorry, that's a hard one. I think you have to divide by 9. About right.
Well, it's mostly the temperatures and the weights and measures that they're.
Oh, okay. Got it. I was like, oh, Jesus, this is going to be really hard. He's going to ask me about hectoliters next, and I'm really going to be suffering.
They're not going to want to build your building somewhere in New Zealand or something.
Got it.
Or they might. I don't know. Who knows? Okay, so let's get into the beers. How do you want to start talking about those? I mean, I have a tap list on my computer in front of me, and let me just stab at something here. This is it? It's listed as the blueberry blonde, but it might be the basic blonde, a gruit bittered with vanilla, sarsaparilla root, and ancho chilies.
That is actually the New World Stout. You do need new glasses. Either that, or I need to correct my website.
Well, it's
usually the case. It's not a priority ever.
I think it's the website, but it's last week's tap list. So
yeah, that would be the New World Stout. We have 2 separate gruits that we actually make a bunch of gruits. That's one of the things we're known for. We have 2 separate gruits that we like to produce about the same time: the Old World Stout and the New World Stout, and they are the exact same grain bill. And we use either traditional European ingredients or ingredients from South America to add the bittering and the adjuncts to the beer.
So how do you get started formulating recipes for gruits? I mean, if you want to forego hops, if you want to get rid of hops, how do you replace that? What's your strategy?
So my strategy is usually to read historical accounts of gruits to see what weird things people were throwing in beer, and then we just start experimenting with that. I made a bunch of gruits as a home brewer, usually at 1 or 2 gallon batches, and it's really easy to go overboard with bittering ingredients if you're not careful, especially with something like mugwort or worm. God forbid you ever use wormwood. The stuff tastes like crap. I don't know how heavily you edit this, so I'm trying to edit myself. Actual wormwood is just unbelievably bitter and nasty. But you'll find that really people have used damn near anything that's considered edible and some things that aren't considered edible to bitter beers for the past 10, 15, 20,000 years, however long people have been making beer. So the beer we're making today, for example, is a gruit. We produce this every year around this time for release at St. Louis Brewers Guild Heritage Festival. It's called Dead Druid King, and it's based on some tomb findings from Bavaria. It's actually the first recorded instance of brewing in Bavaria. It was a tomb finding from a Celtic king, and there was a black wheat beer seasoned with oak leaves. And they found, I guess, residue on some pot shards. And so we kind of conceptually thought through what that beer would taste like. It's a wheat beer, and they wouldn't have really had well-modified grain, so it's going to be kind of funky and kind of not really sweet, but it's going to be on the roasty, smoky side of things. And so we use midnight wheat and a little bit of roasted barley, and then I think on this one we're using just standard two-row brewer's malt for the base. But instead of hops, we take a couple pounds of oak leaves. We go pick young oak leaves off of trees, and we soak them in 180-degree water to make an oak leaf tea, and that's what we mash in with to produce the beer. And so what you end up with is this really tart, almost astringent dark beer, and it's not sour in the sense that it's not microbially soured. It's soured entirely from how the tannins and the acids in the oak leaves themselves.
So is there a difference between using young oak leaves and older oak leaves?
Flavor difference, I'm not sure. I wanted to, older oak leaves tend to be a little tougher, and usually when we make this beer, we're out there the first week that the oak leaves are all the way out, and so they're all young oak leaves anyway, and that's just when we make it. We got enough rain this year early on that the oak leaves came out earlier than we were expecting, so we're experimenting with slightly older oak leaves this time.
And you steep the oak leaves in the water and then dispense with them and use that water as your brewing liquid?
Yep.
Wow.
And that's probably not how they would have done it historically. They would have probably added the oak leaves during the boil. Of course, they probably wouldn't have actually fully boiled it, and they wouldn't have had stainless steel vessels, and they wouldn't have fermented it with a clean yeast strain. So, I'm not too worried about historical accuracy. It's more about trying to figure out how we can adapt something that is way outside of anybody's, sensory experience to something that they would like, I guess, or something that they would find enjoyable. So, we come up with these historical concepts with these really far-flung things, and then we figure out how we can dial them into to a commercial product.
Now, with hops, the longer you boil them, up to a certain point, you extract more bitterness from them. Mm-hmm. Do the oak leaf compounds work in the same way? If you boil them longer, you get a different character?
Something we found with a lot of bittering ingredients that are not hops is that they actually work a lot better later in the boil. Because part of the reason that you boil hops for a long time is you isomerize a bunch of alpha acids, and that actually changes them, and you get a better extract. You're not really dealing with alpha acids in a lot of your non-hop bittering ingredients. You're dealing with other volatile organic compounds, and so you don't want to drive them all the way off.
Right.
And so a lot of the things we use go in, and 15 minutes from the end of the boil or 10 minutes from the end of the boil. We have a couple of things like ginger or horseradish that we actually add at the end of boil. Because if you boil horseradish or boil ginger, it drives off most of the really delightful spicy compounds.
Huh. And you get a bittering with that as well.
You do. You get a bittering with that. And what you're really looking for is you're looking to lower the pH on the wort so that certain things can't live in it, and you're looking to some of the bittering stuff help prevent oxidation reactions as well, which help with staling and with microbiological stability.
Of course, one of the advantages of brewing small batches is you don't have to worry as much about shelf stability.
That's very true.
If it's going quickly.
This is pretty fun, though. We actually kept a keg of Dead Druid King. We kept 2 kegs of Dead Druid King for 6 months and pulled them out at our first anniversary party, and they drank fine.
Huh.
I mean, they tasted just like they did when we put them in the kegs. And we've had a couple of things like that where we routinely hold kegs of beer for up to 200, 250 days, and then we try them, and we've had a couple that weren't, they had lost some of the sparkly character that really made them what they were, but a lot of them aged really well.
Huh. Are there any bittering ingredients that you would stay away from?
I talked about wormwood. I'll never use wormwood in a commercial setting. I think it tastes bad. I dislike the cultural associations with it, which are not only they're incorrect and also somewhat harmful.
And that's the is that the absinthe kind of stuff where it's supposed to drive you crazy?
Yeah, Artemisia Stagone, yeah. And it's only psychoactive in doses that also mildly poison you, the same way nutmeg is, and it's just so god-awful bitter that I can't ever imagine putting it in a beer and having it not be a drain pour. And I've had several beers made with wormwood, and I have not cared for any of them.
So,
but that said, if someone were to challenge me to make a beer with wormwood, I probably would, and it would be fine. On the commercial setting, I don't really. The TTB might raise an eyebrow at us, or the state might raise an eyebrow at us, so we kind of avoid it. And there's plenty of other ingredients to use. Mugwort and yarrow are probably our two favorite bittering ingredients that are non-hops.
Now, where do you get mugwort and yarrow besides Diagon Alley?
Well, yarrow is actually relatively easy to find. It's a popular herb for cooking. We have a store here called Cheryl's Herbs that's run entirely by soft-spoken hippies, and we get a lot of our mugwort and our yarrow from them. We find some stuff on Amazon. I found a guy out in Ohio that can import bulk amounts of these sour cherry pits we like to use for bittering. And we buy those, 4 or 5 pounds at a time. It's a part-time job sourcing all the ingredients we use for our beers.
Yeah, I can imagine. You're not going to get a lot of that stuff from Brewer Supply Group or somebody like that.
You're not. You can get some interesting things from Brewer Supply Group. They and Country Malt Group do have some fun things here and there. But yeah, if you're looking for sweet gale or sarsaparilla leaves or things like that, you might have to look, a little further afield.
So talk about your Ozark Common.
Oh, the Ozark Common, that's a fun one. That's actually a fun one because it has no unusual ingredients in it. It's just a style that nobody really knows about. So the Ozark Common is named after the Kentucky Common, which is a recognized style in the BJCP. Is recently recognized. It's an old moonshiner recipe. Basically, moonshiners would take some of their sour mash, add some burnt barley to it for color, boil it off with a little bit of old hops, and turn it into a sour brown ale to drink while they were distilling. And so we took an old whiskey recipe that I liked, and added a little bit of burnt barley to it. And I think we actually use burnt or roasted barley. We're not using any of the the debittered stuff. That's where most of the flavor, the backbone of the flavor, comes from. It's not sour. And then we kettle sour that beer. So we've done it a couple of different ways, and it sort of, your mileage may vary, but we'll take the wort and we'll either let the wort sit on the grain in the mash tun overnight and then sparge like normal, or we've also moved the wort over to the boil kettle and not boiled it at all and let it sit for anywhere from overnight to 72 hours and then boiled it and racked it to a fermenter. We've also, and both of those methods, they end up making your brewery smell like a cross between like dirty feet and Parmesan cheese. It's just part of the lactobacillus, what happens with that. And, our brew house is right next to the tap room, so it's kind of not exactly desirable. So we've now taken to, we will mash the beer, move it to the boil kettle, bring it up to boil, move it to a fermenter, add some raw grain to it in a bag, and let that fermenter sit for about 72 hours, then rack it back over to the boil kettle and boil it. And it's a little less efficient, but it produces really good results. the primary factor there is that grain has naturally occurring lactobacillus on it, and it really likes warm temperatures, and so you'll get a really nice lactic sourness without having to actually use a lactic culture. Of course, if you're not careful or your pH is wrong, you can also get some pediococcus or some other sour stuff that end up making the beer smell a lot like barf, and that's not super great.
Yeah, I've heard. I've used that technique or a similar technique here at the house, and the first time I did it, the words dumpster and diaper and things like.
Yep. I'm familiar with all of those smells.
It's a little scary for something that you want to drink.
Kettle souring is actually something that's a lot easier to do at home than it is in a commercial setting. And so I recommend if any homebrewers are looking to get into techniques that are slightly unfamiliar to the average all-grain brewer, kettle souring is a really fun one, especially if you're someone that brews outside, because you can mash off into your boil kettle, kind of put it in a temperate location out of the sun and let it sit and do its thing, and then boil it outside, and you avoid a lot of the smell.
Yeah. Well, we've also used commercial products. We've used, commercial lactobacillus and also probiotics as well.
Yeah, probiotics work really well. I've heard of people using just straight up probiotic yogurt, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think there's a brewer here in Northwest Arkansas, and I haven't gotten this from the horse's mouth, but the word is that he uses a yogurt to sour his Berliner Weiss.
His sister lives up here. She told me all about it at a party. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Apparently it works really well.
Yeah, I'm talking about Andy Coates and the Ozark folks, Ozark Brewing Company. And if that's the one you're talking about, and boy,
I was actually talking about Fossil Cove.
Oh, well, there you go.
Maybe she heard about it from Andy.
Ben at Fossil Cove, actually, the first time he did a kettle soured beer, he did a sour mash that was based on a recipe that I did. So,
nice.
Yeah, so I got to kind of follow that process, and it was a little scary, because when you have a commercial mash tun full of souring stuff.
That gets out. I mean, there's a lot of bacteria. It moves pretty quick. Yeah, Dan's sister lives up here. She's really nice.
Well, there you go.
She brings us beer all the time.
So there are other. I want to get to a couple other beers on your list here. This one sounds fun. The Mint Julep Gruit.
Oh yeah, the Mint Julep Gruit. Actually, this is a fun one because people always ask how we come up with recipes, and I mean honestly, sometimes I don't even know. We just do. It's like if you were to explain, if someone had a desk job and they were to explain how they filled out a report, I wouldn't probably understand it. But it's just if coming up with beer recipes is part of your daily job, you just sort of do it on this intuitive or gut level, and you don't really know how you come up with what you come up with, but it, more often than not works. So the Mint Julep Gruit is one of the ways that we strategize for coming up with recipes. We decided that we really liked the classic mint julep cocktail, which is very bourbony. It's got some mint and a little bit of lime, but those flavors are not overwhelmingly sweet, right? It's supposed to be a pretty intense cocktail. And so we discussed the flavor markers in that cocktail and how we would hit those in a beer. And so we've got a pretty big chunk of rye in the mash. We use kaffir lime leaves and spearmint at the end of boil for the gruit to help bitter it and to give it some of those extra flavors. Kaffir lime leaves actually work really, really well for a lime flavor because it's not based on the lime oils off the actual lime rinds. And so you get a really good lime flavor without losing the head retention. And then we've done it with and without. We've made it without a bourbon tincture. We actually prefer it with the bourbon tincture. I think it just gives it just a little bit of an extra bourbon just kick right at the end, and it's super fun.
So you actually soak the leaves in the bourbon, or how do you use the tincture?
I think what we've done in the past, I'd have to ask Rebecca, I believe she actually takes a little bit of bourbon and some sugar and some peppermint and boils it into a syrup. Boils the alcohol out of the bourbon And as homebrewers, you can just add bourbon straight to it, and that's fine. But we get in trouble for adding alcohol to beer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we boil the bourbon. And that pushes all the alcohol out of the bourbon, makes the brewery smell great, and you get this nice bourbony syrup that's got that mint, and you add it. We try to add it after the really vigorous fermentation is done, so that we're not kicking all those volatiles out into the krausen. So we'll wait for the krausen to subside a little bit, and we know there's still some yeast going, and we add that syrup, and it picks fermentation back up for another 12 to 24 hours, and then you get all those really delightful bourbon flavors without very much of the sugar.
Oh, that's cool.
Because the yeast eats the sugar. That's making ingredient syrups and adding them towards the end of primary fermentation is a really excellent way to figure out how flavors work in beer.
And what are some other examples of that kind of approach that you've used?
We made a rhubarb syrup with 60 pounds of rhubarb, which was a huge pain in the butt. We did this 2 weeks ago, and it took all day. And we chopped and peeled a bunch of rhubarb, like 60 pounds, steeped it, got, about, I think, 10-ish gallons of liquid, added sugar, boiled it out. We made, I think, about 8 gallons of syrup, rhubarb syrup, and we added that to a gruit that we had made with sumac. And so we have this beer that has a really interesting rhubarb flavor to it, and it doesn't have any of the sweetness that you expect out of a rhubarb syrup because the sugar we used for the syrup was dry malt extract, DME, and so that ferments out entirely cleanly. Wow.
So do you get any pushback? There are beer purists out there, and we have a T-shirt that says Reinheitsgebot is a 4-letter word. So, but do you
agree.
Do you ever get into it with any beer purists out there that say you're kind of bastardizing the beverage?
Well, the funny thing is my yardstick's a lot longer than theirs when it comes to history. They're like, oh, well, the Reinheitsgebot was passed in 1516. And I'm like, yeah, well, gruits were made in the 9th century, jerk. Like, this is more historical than your idiot marketing law that was designed to remove funds from the Catholic Church. Because that was the whole thing. Catholic Church controlled the gruit mixture. The German nobility owned a bunch of hop fields, and so they made it a requirement in Germany that all beer had to be made with hops, thus depriving the Catholic Church of a bunch of money and making sure the nobility had money. It was regulatory capture. And I don't know. It's funny that we have purely mercantile laws that turn into cultural tombstones or millstones, perhaps. It's frustrating. That said, I do at least half the beer we make are Reinheitsgebot compliant beers, and they're wonderful. And I will always enjoy a great Pilsner. I don't ever want to hear somebody tell somebody else what beer is or is not, because that's entirely culturally constructed.
I would not want to get into a debate with you, Stuart, on any topic. I don't think that's very well said.
I'm a practicing attorney.
That's bearing the lead.
Yeah. Well, I said I went to law school earlier. I just didn't say I graduated. I did. I passed the bar. I'm a partner in a law firm with my wife. We have a lot of fun. Fight coal companies. It's great.
So I take it the regulatory challenges in the licensing and all that was just part of the fun for you in getting into the business.
It's just a set of problems you solve, and I happen to have the exact right toolbox for solving them.
Well, there you go. Well, what's your dream beer? What's on the drawing board in your brain for your next challenge?
Oh man! Well, of all things, my dream beer is actually this Polish lager called Żywicz, which is fantastic. And I can't get it in Missouri. It's unfortunate. I was actually in California for the Rate Beer Best of Awards last year, I think, and someone out there was importing it, and it was relatively fresh, and I was like, oh, hell yes, this beer is great. And so that's my dream beer. I would love to produce just a really excellent Polish mass-market lager. So that's being able to lager, and we're currently in a 1,000-square-foot, 1.5-barrel brewery where lagering isn't possible. Being able to lager is probably my dream, which is just kind of insane.
Well, you're going to be closer to that dream when you move into the new building.
I know. Let me think through our list. We have The things I've been most excited about lately is a rye ESB that I made as a home brewer and then I completely forgot about. And then I was cleaning my house and found a bunch of old homebrew recipes. And the only caption on the rye ESB for the quality thing was just, holy and I was like, oh, I wonder if that means it was good. And so we reproduced it commercially, and it turns out holy was positive and not negative. And so we're rebrewing the rye ESB soon, and I really enjoy that beer. We have a bunch of great things that I like to do in the summer. A lot of our summer beers are really fun. We've got Gosas and Saisons that we really enjoy. We have, I think we're going to do, man, I had too many other details in my head from building up this new location. That happens. It's fun and frustrating. I think we're going to do a beer with Old Vienna's Red Hot Riplet seasoning. Old Vienna is a local potato chip company, and they make this kind of spicy, sweet, salty seasoning for their chips. It's Red Hot Riplets. And I think we're going to use that seasoning to produce a Gosa.
Well, I when I went to Vancouver recently, I had a beer that was made with potato chips.
Really?
Yeah.
They just mashed the potato chips? Nice.
Yeah.
You have to deal with the oil is the only problem.
Yeah, they were.
And we're gonna.
They might have been baked and not fried.
That would help because, like, the oils really kill you on head retention and shelf life stability and everything else. We're going to, for this, there's a little bit of sunflower oil in the seasoning mix itself. We're going to have to put it on parchment paper and bake it to drive the oil off, which that's a really good way if you're home brewing, if you need to get rid of oils out of nuts or anything else. You know, chop everything up, lay it out on butcher paper on a pan, put it in the oven at between 300 and 350 degrees, and pull it out and shake it every 10 minutes or so until everything's nice and toasty, and it'll drive all the oil out of whatever it is you're using.
Cool.
And into that butcher paper, yeah. And you can change the butcher paper a couple times, and that's like we have a beer we make with pecans that would have no head retention at all if we didn't do this to it. And so the night before we brew that beer, somebody gets to stay up late and toast, 80 pounds of pecans or however many pecans it is.
And my listeners would be mad at me if I didn't compliment you on your pronunciation of pecan.
It is definitely not pecan. I am no Yankee.
Yeah, I like to say the pecan goes under the bed.
That's right. Very true. Especially if you've been drinking. Yeah, no, I'm from Oklahoma, and I know how to pronounce things correctly most of the time. Just don't ask me about my roots.
Roots?
Yeah.
Well, we need to get together over a beer one day and trade Arkansas versus Oklahoma pronunciations on things.
You'd be amazed. There's a lot of French stuff up here in St. Louis that everyone pronounces incorrectly. There's a great street called Gravois, which should be Gravois, and a street that is de Bolivar that should be de Bolivier. So those are all fun.
People get lost when they first move there, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, I did. Yeah, I pronounced everything wrong. I studied French in school and lived in France for a little bit and taught middle school French, and so I moved here and tried to pronounce all these French words correctly, and I just got blank stares for a couple weeks.
Well, Stuart, this has been a lot of fun, and see, I think you can go back to Bill and say that you did have something to contribute to Basic Brewing Radio.
Yeah. I'm very proud of both of us.
I keep threatening Bill that I'm gonna go up and buy him a beer up there, and have him show me around, some of the fun breweries up there. And I think you would be on the first on the list.
I think you should make good on that threat. Come on up. We'll I'll jump in and I'll jump in and tell tall tales with Bill.
Awesome. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again to Stuart. Earthbound sounds like a really fun place. And it's great that they're putting beer back into an old brewery building and, writing new rules while they're doing it. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com. Or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our support link where you can throw a couple of bucks into the tip jar by subscribing financially to our podcast. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract, Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo. You can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store as well. You can find our logbooks where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all those out at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support there greatly, greatly. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are Silly Rabbit Confetti Eggs and Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. But you can't go faster than the speed of light. You can be only in a hurry up to a certain point. So thanks again, everybody. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and use that code SOUR for a free Michael Tonsmeyer's book. Or you can subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine through the associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.